So today, very exciting, we begin the fifth book of the Torah, the book of Devarim. Eile hadvarim asher diber Moshe kol Yisrael be'ever hayarden. These are the words that Moshe spoke to all of Israel on the other side of the Jordan. Bamidbar barava musuf bein paran uvein tofav lavan chatzerot v'di zahav. Through the wilderness, in the Arava, between Param and Tofel, Lavan, Chatzerot, Di Zahav. Achad asar yomei chorev derech har seir ad Kadesh Barnea. It's 11 days from Chorev to get to Kadesh Barnea if you're going through the route of Har Seir. And now we're told, so these are going to be the words of Moshe. When did it happen? Vayi barbim shana b'shtei asar chodesh. B'echad lechodesh diber Moshe al b'nei Yisrael k'chol asher tziva Adonai oto alehem. So it is the 40th year on the first day of the 11th month, what we would call the first day of the month of Adar. Right, that's the 11th month of the year. Actually, I take that back. It is Adar because Nisan is the first month for the biblical calendar, and that's when Moshe is going to give instructions to Bnei Yisrael. And just so we're again trying to figure out when did this happen, verse 4: after the battles with the defeat of Sichon and the defeat of Og, so on the other side of the Jordan, Moshe undertook to expound upon the Torah to give these following instructions. And this is what he says. Just a couple of things real quick, because we have a lot of verses. There's a wonderful, I think it was in the Midrash, I thought of it, and then of course I didn't, not surprisingly, it was thought about the many centuries, millennia before I thought about it. There's a beautiful arc in Moshe's life. He begins with God as the person who says, Lo ish Devarim anochi. I'm not a man of many words. I don't have much to say. Don't send me to take the Jewish people out of Egypt. 40 years later, even though Moshe was the greatest of all people, even back then, 40 years later, Eile hadvarim asher diber Moshe. Moshe has gone from somebody who's scared to address the crowd, scared to speak, says he's not a people person, to now being a man of many words. The whole fifth book of the Torah is a man of many words. And another thing that needs to be pointed out, and we're going to see it right now, is we're going from the third person to the first person. The whole Torah, Moshe is the third person. And God spoke to Moshe as follows, and then Moshe gives the instructions. And that's the way this book starts out also, right? It starts out in the third person. These are the words which Moshe spoke. But now, starting in verse 6, Adonai Eloheinu diber eleinu b'chorev le'mor rav lachem shevet b'harazeh. Our God spoke to us at Chorev. Moshe is speaking personally. Moshe is the one, it's not God's words to Moshe, and Moshe is the third person. Moshe is the first person, he is the speaker. God spoke to us. You have stayed too long at this mountain. Right? The Start and make your way to the hill country, the Amorites, the neighbors, right? The Negev, the seacoast, the lands of the Canaans, Lebanon, as far as the great river, right? You have to start moving to have a territory, to have a land. You can't just be runaway slaves. I've put the land at your disposal, it will be yours. I've placed the land in front of you, so go take possession. Go and conquer the land that God gave to our fathers, to Avram, Yitzchak, and to Yaakov, to say that it was going to be for their descendants for all time. And I said to you at that point in time, when God said it's time to leave the mountain, start to go into the Israel, I cannot bear the burden by myself. Adonai Elohechem hirba etchem. God has multiplied you, right? You're a large people. This is not the 70 men or the 70 family members, I should say, who made it down with Yaakov to Egypt, Yaakov and his descendants. We are kechochvei hashamayim larov. We are like the stars of the sky. I can't do it all by myself. There are too many of you. Adonai Elohei avotechem Yosef alechem kachem elef pa'amim vivarech etchem kasher diber alechem. The God of your ancestors has increased your number 1,000-fold and blessed you as promised, right? We know this. It didn't happen on day one with Avram, but Avram was told that if he goes into the land of Israel, he will have many descendants. His wife was unable to get pregnant. It didn't happen at first. Reward in the Torah takes a long time, but eventually it got there, Moshe says. And Moshe continues, and this is, here we see verse 12, Eicha eseh levadi tarchachem umasachem v'rivchem. Eicha, how can I do it alone? With the trouble and the burden and the bickering. And we know, of course, this word Eicha will be the opening word of the saddest book in the Tanakh, Lamentations, written by Jeremiah about the destruction, following the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash. And Moshe here represents these words. And Devarim, it's always that time of year when these are read. Havu lachem anashim So pick from your tribes people who are wise, who are discerning, who are experienced, and I will appoint them as your heads. Vatanuoti, but you said to me, Vatamru, and surprisingly, they said, Tova davar sher dibarti la. So when I said, I can't do this all by myself, we need other leaders, we need other people involved in the process, you said, that's a good idea. And Moshe says, I set up a whole bureaucracy. I know bureaucracy is usually a bad word, but I set up a whole court system. So, right, it's not possible for me. Moshe seems to here be leaving out this whole thing where Yitro had this idea. It's for him. We'll come back to that a different time. Verse 16, and I got the different magistrates, the different judges together, and I said, listen to your fellow Israelites, decide between one party, be it a fellow or a stranger, important word there, shomoa, listen. The word shema is going to come up. And later on in the Tanakh, when the person wants to be the wisest of all men, and later described as the wisest of all men, Shlomo, it's usually said, well, God asked him, what do you want? And he asked for wisdom, but he doesn't just say, ask for chokhmah. He doesn't ask for wisdom. He asks for the ability to hear his people and judge them properly. And that's what Moshe is telling the judges to do from this. You want to be able to judge properly, you need to listen. If you don't listen, you can't judge properly. And don't be partial in judgment. Whether it be a poor person, a wealthy person, an important person, everybody is equal in the eyes of the judgment. And if something is too difficult for you, come to me. I will solve it. And I commanded you and instructed you all the things that you were supposed to do. And then and then we left Har Chorev and then we traveled through this great and terrible and difficult wilderness, through this desert, all the way through the hill country, and we reached here to Kadesh Barnea. And I said to you, we've come to the mountains of Amorites that God will give you. So again, look and see the land that God has given you. Alei Reish. Go up and take it. Let's take this land. This land is going to be yours. God didn't take us out of Egypt to have us just wander in the desert. We need to go and take our country, to get Canaan, to make it into Israel. Don't be scared. And you approached me and you said, let us send men to scout out the land, spies. You want us to go into the land, Moshe, so we should know a little bit more about it. We need to know what's the best way to go. Who should we attack first? Who should we try to make a peace out? What should we do? It's very different in the book of Bamidbar, where we have the fuller telling the story of the spies. There, God comes to Moshe and tells Moshe to send out spies. Here, it's Bnei Israel who come to Moshe. And one of the comments that's made by commentators in Midrash is that the Torah is richer or more detailed in certain places than others. Here, it's telling the full story. The Jews come to Moshe. They say they want spies. Moshe asks God. God tells Moshe to send spies. So the story in Bamidbar, according to many, begins in the middle. There are others who just interestingly talk about, right, there over time, our memories change. And maybe here, Moshe's memory of exactly what happened might have changed. Right, people see these things. It was made famous. Was it Brian Williams, the NBC correspondent, who claimed that he was on a helicopter that was shot at in Iraq. I don't remember the details, and he lost his job. And what seems to have happened is his memory got changed. There was a crazy event that happened. There was a helicopter that was shot at. I think he was a correspondent in a different helicopter, and for some reason, he came to believe that he was in that helicopter. I could be wrong. You can Google that later and find out. So Moshe here, the story has changed somewhat. And what does Moshe say in verse 23? So I said, it's a good idea. And we sent out 12 men. They went for the hill country, right? The hills, the Hare Yehuda. They came all the way to Eshkol. They spied it out. And they took some of the fruit of the land and they brought it down to us. And they said, this is a good land that God has given to us. Now comes the but. Right? Moshe doesn't have the but. He makes it sound like, well, they said it was a good land. But you refused to go up, and you flouted, you rebelled against the command of God. And so here is Moshe again. Is he remembering things differently than the way we saw it? Is he changing it? Does he want all of Bnei Yisrael not to just push the blame onto 10 bad spies? He seems to be changing things. You sulk, you whined in your tents. It is out of God's hatred for us that you brought us out of the land of Egypt to hand us over to the Amorites to wipe us out. What kind of place are we going to? And now he finally says that the spies didn't say everything was so great. First, he made it sound like the spies said everything was fine. It was a good land. Our brothers have taken the heart of us, meaning the 10 bad spies, because they said they're strong people. They're taller than ours. They have large cities. They're fortified. They even have giants there. So here Moshe, right, he wants to shift blame. He doesn't want the blame to be only upon the spies. He wants it to seem very much that it was all of Bnei Israel, and therefore they need to be careful as they're going into the land of Israel. And I said, don't be scared of them. God who goes in front of you, he will fight for you, just like he did. And you saw in Egypt, and in the wilderness, where God carried you the way the way a parent carries a child. The whole way, God, right, supported you. The clouds of glory, the manna, the water, in a place you're not supposed to live. God supported us for 40 years. Yet for all of that, you have no faith in God. God who goes before you to find a place where you are to camp. The night with a fire to light up so you can see and be protected, and be warm, and a cloud by a day to protect you from the sun, to guide you in the route. And God heard your complaints. Oh, God, we're going to die. The Amorites, we're not going to be able to take over the land of Egypt. And God became angry, and he said, he promised, he swore him, no one from this evil generation is going to see the land that I swore to your ancestors. Except for Kalev ben Yefuneh. We oftentimes, when we talked about in the past, 12 spies, 10 of them bad, 2 of them good. The good ones, Kalev ben Yefuneh, Yoshua ben Nun. The one who really stands up strong is Kalev. Yoshua later goes and joins Kalev in supporting that the Bnei Yisrael should go into the land of Israel. But Kalev is mentioned here singularly because he was really the strong one, the one who tried to tell Bnei Yisrael that they could enter into the land of Israel. They needed to have faith by God. And here again, something strange happens. Because of you, Moshe says, God was upset at me and said that I shall not enter it. That's not, something happened with a rock many years later than this. But nevertheless, that's not the way that Moshe is retelling the story here. But Yoshua, the son of Nun, right, my trusted companion, you should make him strong, because he is going to bring you into the land of Israel. He's going to help you to go and to take over this country. And the little ones who you said would be carried off, that they would be, right, they would die in war. Your children, they didn't know good from bad. They weren't involved in this decision. You thought that they were going to die in battle, die in war. They're going to enter into the land of Israel. They will possess it. As for you, turn about and march back into the Sea of Reeds. So Moshe is talking about something, right? The story of the spies, and why only now, 39 years later, are they on the precipice of entering the land of Israel? Why didn't it happen 39 years ago? It's all because of the story of the spies. Vatanu vatomru elai. And then finally, after that, when I said you going back into the desert, you're not entering into the land of Israel, then you said, Chatanu la'Adonai anachnu na'alev v'nilchamnu k'chol asher tziva Adonai aleinu v'tachrogu isha kli malchamto v'tehinu la'alo tahara. And the people said, we were guilty, we made a mistake. So now we want to go and fight like God commanded us. And you got your weapons and you put on your armor and you started for the hill country to go and attack the Amorites. More. And God said to me, Emor lahem, tell them, Lo talu. I already made up my mind. They shouldn't go up to war. Velo telachmu. They shouldn't do it. Ki eineni bikir bechem. I am not there to help them. Velo tinagfu lefnei oivechem. And then not let them get routed by their enemies. Vadaber alechem velo shmatem. And I told you guys, I pleaded with you. I said, God is upset. God's not with us anymore. You're not going to be able to defeat those strong people. If you would have trusted God, we could have destroyed them, decimated them, would have been easy. But you didn't listen. And now God doesn't want you to go up. But you, again, flouted, rebelled against God's command, and you marched up into the hill country to fight against the Amorites. The Amorites came out, they knew the territories, and they came out of you like a swarm of bees, and they chased you and crushed you all the way to Seir. And again, the survivors of that, and there were many who were killed, or the other members of Bnei Yisrael, again, cried before God, whined before God, but God did not listen to your cry, because again, you showed a lack of faith. And therefore, we stayed in Kadesh for a very long time. Right? It was we thought we were going to go into Israel a year after we left, but it became a place that you spent many, many years. And the Rashi comments, they were in Kadesh for almost 38 years. They traveled around a little bit, but 19 of them they spent in Kadesh, and 19 of them they went around aimlessly. So it's a moment where Bnei Israel had lost their ways, and Moshe is starting this book, reminding them, telling them that if you want success, you need to listen to God, and you need to learn from the lessons of the past as we enter into the land of Israel.